Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Sarah, and today I wanted to sit down and talk about my breastfeeding, pumping journey. And I want to include my son and my daughter because I feel like what happened with my son led to choices that I made with my daughter. So I'm going to quickly go over what happened the first time around and then more recently kind of how it's been with my daughter. And I wanted to film this video now because we are kind of done with the whole process at this point. Like, she is 100% on formula now, so since it's all done, I wanted to wait until now to film exactly how everything went down, if that makes sense. So it's kind of hard to talk about a lot of these things, and that's what I could have filmed this video a week or two ago, but it's just kind of hard to talk about. So I wanted to wait, but I also don't want to wait too long to where I'm like forgetting parts of it. So I'm gonna film it now, but it's definitely harder this time around to come to terms with, and I'll get into that in a second. So let me just summarize. With my son, I fully intended on breastfeeding 100%. That was my plan, but I had to pump because I figured there'd be situations where you need to pump even if you're breastfeeding. So I tried to breastfeed. He was born 4 weeks early, and so he was having trouble latching. I didn't know what I was doing, and I also have really large breasts and my nipples are weird, and it just, the combination of me and him being early and not really knowing what he was doing. He was so little. He was like under 6 pounds, like when he was first born. Really, my baby Julie is laying here next to me, so you might hear her because she's talking a lot at this point. And I do have a 5-month update video out for her, so if you're interested in how she's doing at 5 months, you can go click on that video. That's my most recent video. But back to my son and that whole situation. So I used the nipple shield for a little bit. I was really trying to breastfeed, but it just wasn't working. I was really unhappy and stressed out, and so we tried a lot of different things. We were syringe feeding him a little bit because we didn't want to cause nipple confusion, but then we realized that was just silly. So we started using a bottle, and I think we were supplementing a little bit with formula, but then I started pumping. So then we were giving him breast milk in a bottle, but also trying to breastfeed still. And it just wasn't working. So eventually I stopped and I just said, I can pump, that's fine. I'll just pump and give him breast milk. But my supply was very small or low because he was born a month early and my body was sick when he was born because I had preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome. So I was on magnesium. I was just like kind of out of it a couple days after he was born. So I feel like there's a lot of reasons why it just wasn't meant to be. There was a lot of things going against us. So I was pumping, but I wasn't getting enough. And about the 3-month mark, I was going back to work and my supply was decreasing. My son's needs were increasing. So I just said, at this point, it's not worth it for me to go back to work and keep pumping because it's a huge hassle to have to find a room and pump, you know, multiple times a day. And it just seemed like a lot of work when I was barely getting anything, and he was mostly on formula anyway. So I stopped pumping at 3 months. So at the 3-month mark, he switched to 100% formula. I was pretty happy with that decision because I knew it made sense. It made me happy to not pump anymore. Pumping is difficult for most people. It's just hard and stressful and painful. So I was happy to stop pumping, but it also made sense to stop right when I went back to work because my supply was diminishing, and it was just a good point to stop the whole pumping thing. And I was happy with that decision. Didn't even really think twice about it. Honestly, from what I recall, I was fine with it. I honestly like wanted to give him breast milk as long as I could, but I just knew that that made sense. So with my daughter, I kind of figured we would go the pumping route because I knew how difficult it was trying to breastfeed. I tried. She was in the NICU for 12 days. So that was a whole nother thing where it's really hard to start breastfeeding and get that latch figured out when they're in the NICU, and they can't even try for some of the days that they're there. She was born 3 weeks early, and so I still tried, but I didn't try that hard because I knew that even if everything was fine with the baby and she was born like on her due date, I still probably would have issues because I felt like my nipples were weird and I have huge breasts, and it just was difficult to get them in the right position and everything. So I figured I'll probably end up exclusively pumping for a while. So I actually had 2 pumps. I had my pump that I had before, and then I got a pump that does not have to be constantly plugged in. You can walk around with it. And that's the Amita Maya. I did a review on that a few videos back. You can go back and find that video, but I love that pump. It was amazing for me. It totally changes the pumping game when you have a pump that you don't have to be connected to an outlet for. So I had 2 pumps. I was ready to go. And so I pumped a ton in the NICU. I was like trying to really be on top of it to get a really good supply this time around, because with my son, I didn't have much of a supply. So I was pretty successful at having a good amount to where at the beginning I was more than giving her 100% of what she needed. I was actually stocking up a little bit. And then when we got a little bit further along, it turned to barely keeping up with her. Then it turned to giving her about 80% of her needs and then supplementing a little bit with formula. And that went on for a few months. So I would say between like 1 month and 3.5 months, she was getting like 80% breast milk and 20% formula. And I felt pretty great about that. I mean, I was pumping a lot more than I was with my son, and she was getting a lot of breast milk, and it was difficult because I have a toddler now and a newborn, and I'm pumping every 2 to 3 hours. During those months, like month 1 to 3, I was getting up, I think once a night for a while, and then I kind of stopped getting up throughout the night. So that may or may not have affected my supply, but I was kind of following the pattern that she was following in terms of when she wanted to eat and when she was waking up, and that's when I would pump. So for a while, things were going great. My supply was kind of staying steady with, you know, what she was needing and covering about 80% of it. But then it kind of started to diminish a little bit, or maybe just stay the same, but then she started to need more. And so I could kind of see like an end in sight where at a certain point it doesn't feel like it's worth it, because you're putting so much effort in and they're still needing so much more than what you can give them. And I was trying to get back into working out pretty consistently. I was going to some like Zumba classes and things like that, and when I already have large breasts and then you're creating milk, it just makes it that much more dramatic, and it was really hard to work out, and especially like doing cardio. And so I was really struggling. I felt like it was a good time for me to think about stopping pumping, because it was just affecting me like mentally and emotionally, and trying to watch my toddler and pumping all the time and keeping track of all of that, and then trying to work out and do all of that. I mean, it literally, like when I was doing Zumba and dancing around and jumping, like it was painful. And it was, I think also when you wear a sports bra, it reduces your supply. So then that was happening too. So I figured I would set a goal for myself. With my son, I made it to 3 months. And so with my daughter, I wanted to make it to 4 months. That's what I was hoping to do. And so about 3.5 months is when I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll start pumping a little bit less, because it takes a while to completely stop pumping. You probably could stop very quickly if you needed to, but it scares me because I don't want to get mastitis. I don't want to get clogged ducts. So I wanted to do the process very slowly of stopping. So I figured at like 3.5 months, I would start that process. So I was pumping like 6 times a day. I went down to 5, went down to 4, went down to 3. I mean, that's kind of how I did it. And I kind of just felt it out at each point. some of the phases I would stay there for like a couple days or a week even, because I just felt like my body needed time to like regulate and like reduce the supply slowly. I think when I went down from 6 to 5 to 4, that process was really quick because it wasn't that drastic of a difference. But when you're going from like pumping 4 times a day to 3 to 2, it's a big difference for your body. So I kind of went slowly in that area. I don't know if this makes sense. I think if you are pumping or you have pumped, like, you understand what that means, but you just have to go slow if you want to make sure you don't get any clogged ducts. And sometimes you just need to pump when you just wouldn't normally pump, but you just kind of feel like, all right, my boobs need to pump now. Like, you can just feel it. And so you kind of have to just listen to your body and just be careful, because if you go too fast and you're not careful, then you can get clogged ducts and mastitis and all that. So, and I really had time. Like, I didn't need to be done. It wasn't like I was going back to work like with my son. I had the time to stretch it out. So the whole process of stopping pumping for me, since I went so slow, there was towards the end I was just pumping once a day, and I did that for a while, and then I did every other day for a little while. So the whole process for me took about a month, actually. So I was still giving her a little bit of breast milk up until 4.5 months. So I was able to get to that 4-month goal of mine. And, you know, everything's fine. She's on 100% formula, and I looked away for like 5 minutes, and I looked back and she's like all the way like turned around and like across the room. So that's kind of how it all went down for me and why I made the decisions that I made. But the thing that's different this time around, I had the intention of exclusively pumping going into this pregnancy and this birth and everything. So that's a little bit different. It was not something that just kind of happened. Like, that pretty much was my plan. But what's interesting is stopping pumping this time around, I feel so much more, like, I don't know if nostalgic is the right word, emotional, and there's a lot of reasons why that could be. I'm not going back to work, so I didn't have a hard reason why I was stopping pumping. So I feel a little bit guilty about that. I could have pumped longer, but I just felt like it was the right thing for me to do, and so that's why I did it. But there's a little bit of guilt there because I didn't have to stop. I wasn't going back to work. There was nothing that needed me to stop right then. But also, this could potentially be our last baby. So the idea of like never pumping or never creating breast milk again, that makes me really sad and emotional. So there's a lot of emotions around stopping pumping this time around. And I want to give her what's best for her and as much breast milk as she can have, but at the same time, I need to take care of myself and I need to do what I need and what's best for me. And it's very hard to know if you're making the right decision for both of you. But at this point, what's done is done, and we're both healthy and everything's good, and she luckily can handle formula like a champ and is doing really well. So we're doing good, and that is my story. And if I had another baby, which is still on the table as an option, but leaning towards probably not. If we had another one, I would probably plan on exclusively pumping like I did with Julie, and maybe try breastfeeding a little bit, but not too seriously, because I just didn't want to put a lot of pressure on myself to make that happen again, because it was so hard on me with my son that it didn't work out. And so I didn't want to put all that pressure on myself this time around. And I think going into a third time, I would do the same thing. And I probably would keep that goal of 4 months and just kind of see how it goes. Maybe you make it to 3.5, 4, 5. But I feel like 4 months was like a good goal for me. And that also is kind of the place where usually babies start having a little bit of baby cereal or purees, like between 4 and 6 months. So that is another reason why it kind of made sense for me to stop pumping around there, because then we're going to start introducing other foods. And so I don't know, that's just some of the reasons why I made the decision that I made. But everybody is so different, and I don't honestly even think you need a reason to stop pumping. If you want to stop, then you can stop, because you're still going to feed your baby and they're still going to be fine. So it's just sometimes nice to hear what other people are doing and their thought process and their emotions and everything behind it, because it's such a hard thing to do and to talk about. Exclusively pumping is hard. I just wanted to share my experiences just in case you are curious and you want to know how it went for me, I guess. I gotta go feed this little one a bottle, so I'm gonna end the video here. But I really appreciate you guys watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, and if you are not subscribed to my channel, please consider joining my family here. I make a lot of motherhood related videos, some sit down videos, but some vlogs, some cleaning videos. So if that sounds interesting to you. I also have a 2-year-old son. I appreciate you guys being here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.